Chimamanda Obiora, known as Mandy, was a vibrant and ambitious young girl of 24, born into a modest family in Umuobi, a small village in Anambra State. Mandy's world revolved around her parents and her four younger siblings. As the first daughter, she had always been her father's pride and her mother's confidant. Life in Umuobi was simple but fulfilling. Her father, Papa Mandy, was a palm wine tapper who worked tirelessly to provide for his family. Mandy admired his resilience and often dreamed of becoming a lawyer so she could one day defend people like her father, who was often taken advantage of by wealthy landowners. Papa, when I become a lawyer, I'll make sure nobody beats you again, Mandy would say, her eyes sparkling with determination. Her father would chuckle and pat her on the head. My Mandy, you will do great things. Just focus on your studies. But fate, unpredictable and cruel, had other plans. One fateful raining evening, Papa Mandy set out to tap palm wine as usual. The skies were heavy and thunder growled in the distance. Papa, the rain is coming. Maybe you should wait, Mandy had pleaded, her voice filled with worry. But he had smiled and waved her off. Don't worry, Mandy. I'll be back soon. Later that evening, the village boys came running to their compound, carrying his lifeless body. He had slipped from the tree and fallen to his death. Blood stained his wrapper, and his face was etched with the pain of his final moments. Mandy's scream echoed through the night. Her mother, Ngozi, collapsed beside her husband's body. The children clung to Mandy, their small bodies trembling in fear and confusion. From that moment, life became a relentless storm. Without her father's income, the family quickly fell into poverty. Mandy's uncles, who had once shared meals at their table, turned their backs on them. Worse still, they claimed her father's land, arguing that a widow had no rights to properties. Mama, why are they doing this? Mandy asked one day as her mother sat in silence, her head bowed in despair. Because we are women, my daughter. This is the world we live in, Ngozi replied, her voice heavy with resignation. Mandy dropped out of school to help her mother. She worked as a maid in a nearby town, scrubbing floors and washing clothes for meager wages. But no matter how hard she worked, it was never enough. Her siblings often went to bed hungry, and her mother's health deteriorated rapidly. One night, as they sat around a dimly lit kerosene lamp, Mandy's youngest brother, Ebube, whispered, Sister Mandy, I'm hungry. Those three words broke her. I'll find a way, she promised, tears streaming down her face. I'll find a way to take care of all of you. Desperation led Mandy down a dark road. She began associating with men who promised her money in exchange for her time. At first, it was small gifts of a bag of rice here, a pair of shoes there. But soon, Mandy found herself in a relationship with Emeka, a smooth-talking man who seemed to have the world at his feet. Mandy, you are too beautiful to suffer like this, Emeka often said, his voice dripping with charm. I can take care of you. At first, she resisted. But as her family situation worsened, she gave in. Emeka showered her with gifts and promises of a better life. One day, he introduced her to Obinna, a wealthy businessman with connections abroad. "This man can change your life," Emeka said. "He can take you to Europe, where you can work and make enough money to send back home." The idea of going abroad ignited a flicker of hope in Mandy's heart. She imagined herself working as a nanny or cleaner, sending money back to her family and rebuilding their lives. "I'll do it," she said, her voice filled with determination. Obinna arranged everything: her passport, her visa, and her flight. The night before she left, Mandy knelt before her mother. "Mama, this is our breakthrough," she said, clutching her mother's hands. "I'll come back with enough money to send my siblings to school and build us a new house." Her mother hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her face. "My daughter, may God go with you." But the moment Mandy arrived in Europe, her dream turned into a nightmare. Instead of taking her to the promised job, Obinna handed her over to strangers who locked her in a filthy apartment. "Where am I?" Mandy screamed, panic gripping her chest. "You are here to pay off your debt," one of the men said, his voice cold and menacing. "What debt? I don't owe anyone." They ignored her protest. Days turned into weeks, and Mandy was forced into prostitution. Her body became a commodity, sold to strangers night after night. She tried to escape several times, but each attempt ended in brutal beatings. One day, Obinna visited her. "You're not bringing in enough money," he said, his tone laced with disdain. "You're worth more dead than alive." Before she could react, she was drugged. When she woke up, she was in a hospital bed, her side throbbing with pain. "What happened to me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. A nurse leaned over and whispered, "They took your kidneys." Mandy's world crumbled. She realized she had been betrayed, not just by Obinna, but by her own desperation. Mandy was deported back to Nigeria, a shell of her former self. When she stepped off the plane, she felt the weight of shame and despair pressing down on her. She had left with promises of prosperity, but returned with nothing, except a body broken by betrayal and a soul scarred by the horrors she had endured. The airport was buzzing with activity, yet Mandy felt invisible. She clutched her small, worn-out bag tightly, her frail body barely able to stand. Her mother and younger siblings waited anxiously outside the arrival gates, their faces lighting up the moment they saw her. "Mandy!" Ngozi cried, rushing to embrace her daughter. But as her arms wrapped around Mandy, she froze. Her child was no longer the vibrant girl she had sent off months ago. Mandy's face was sunken, her eyes hollow, and her once smooth skin bore marks of neglect. "What happened to you, my daughter?" Ngozi whispered, tears streaming down her face. Mandy didn't have the strength to reply. She collapsed into her mother's arms, and together they wept. Back in their small hut, Mandy recounted everything: her betrayal by Emeka and Obinna, the horrors she faced abroad, and the devastating loss of her kidneys. Her siblings listened in stunned silence, their young faces etched with sorrow. Ngozi sobbed uncontrollably. Chineke, my daughter, what have they done to you? Mama, I was blind with desperation, Mandy said, her voice trembling. I wanted to save this family, but I lost myself instead. The family mourned together. But Mandy's return also brought a glimmer of hope. Despite her pain, she was alive. And that alone was a miracle. The weeks that followed were agonizing. Mandy's health deteriorated rapidly, and her family struggled to afford the medication she needed. Ngozi took up petty trading, selling fruits and vegetables in the village markets to keep food on the table. One day, while lying on her mat, Mandy overheard her younger brother, Ebube, speaking to their neighbor. My sister says we must never give up, he said proudly. Even after everything she's been through, she still wants to help others. Those words sparked something in Mandy. She realized she couldn't let her suffering be in vain. She decided to turn her pain into purpose. With the little strength she had, Mandy began visiting schools and churches in the village. Sharing her story, she warned young girls about the dangers of human trafficking and the deceitful promises of men like Emeka and Obina. At first, people were hesitant to listen. Many whispered behind her back, calling her names and judging her choices. But Mandy persisted, knowing that her story could save someone else. Her efforts caught the attention of a local NGO, Hope for the Vulnerable, which worked to combat human trafficking. They invited Mandy to join their team as a survivor advocate. With their support, she began traveling to neighboring villages, spreading awareness and providing resources for at-risk girls. One day, during a workshop organized by the NGO, Mandy met Chukwuma, a kind-hearted doctor who volunteered with the organization. He was moved by her story and offered to help her with her medical needs. You've been through so much, Chukwuma said during one of their meetings, but you're still standing. That's something to be proud of. His words gave Mandy hope. With his guidance, she was placed on a treatment plan that stabilized her condition. Though she would never regain her kidneys, her health improved significantly. Through her advocacy work, Mandy gained recognition beyond her village. She was invited to speak at a state conference in Enugu, where she shared the stage with government officials and activists. Her story brought many in the audience to tears, and she received a standing ovation. One evening, after an event in Lagos, Mandy was approached by a young girl who looked eerily familiar. Sister Mandy, the girl said, her voice trembling. I was almost like you. A man promised to take me abroad, but I remembered your story. That's why I didn't go. Mandy's heart swelled with emotion. What was his name? His name is Emeka, the girl whispered. The mention of his name sent chills down Mandy's spine. She knew she couldn't resist until he and others like him were brought to justice. Through the NGO and her growing network, Mandy worked with law enforcement to track down Emeka and Obina. After months of investigation, both men were arrested and charged with human trafficking and organ harvesting. Mandy attended their trial, standing tall as a symbol of resilience and justice. As the judge sentenced them to life in prison, Mandy felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Mandy's journey is a testament to the strength of human spirit. Despite losing everything, her father, her education, her health, she found a way to rise above her circumstances and create a life filled with purpose. Through her advocacy, she saved countless young girls from falling into the same traps she did. She reminded them that their worth was not defined by their struggles, but by their ability to overcome them. To every young person she met, Mandy had one message. Desperation can lead you down dangerous paths, but hope and resilience can lead you back to the light. Never let your pain define you. Let it refine you. And so, Mandy's story became a beacon of hope for her village and beyond. A reminder that even in the darkest times, there is always a way to rise again.